What if I could show you a world hidden beneath jungle canopies and mountain peaks? A world of forgotten empires and silent stone temples that hold stories we're only beginning to understand. Picture this: you're soaring above the dense green expanse of the Amazon, and suddenly, beneath the thick foliage, the geometric shapes of ancient plazas and pyramids emerge, structures so perfectly aligned they defy simple explanation. These are the lost cities of the Americas, places where brilliant minds engineered marvels without modern tools, where cultures flourished and then vanished, leaving behind mysteries that whisper through the stones. For centuries, explorers and archaeologists have ventured into remote landscapes, driven by legends of golden cities and advanced civilizations. What they found was even more extraordinary: evidence of societies that mastered astronomy, designed sprawling urban centers, and developed technologies we struggle to replicate today. Yet, almost as suddenly as they rose, these cultures disappeared, abandoning their homes, their art, and their knowledge, leaving us with tantalizing clues and endless questions. How did they achieve such feats? Why did they vanish? And what can their secrets teach us about human ingenuity, resilience, and the fragile nature of civilization itself? In this video, we're embarking on an epic journey to uncover 25 astonishing secrets of these lost cities. From the haunting ruins of Maya metropolises shrouded in jungle, mist to the breathtaking Incan citadels perched high in the Andes, we'll explore advanced engineering that still baffles experts, unravel the stories behind mysterious disappearances, and decode symbols that hint at knowledge far ahead of its time. This isn't just a tour of ancient sites, it's an invitation to step into the unknown, to witness the echoes of human ambition and imagination, and to see history not as something static, but as a living, evolving puzzle. So settle in and open your mind. You're about to discover wonders that challenge everything we thought we knew. Our journey begins not in the dense jungles, but in a high valley just 30 miles northeast of modern-day Mexico City. Here, rising from the arid plain, stands one of the most awe-inspiring and enigmatic structures ever built in the ancient world, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan. This colossal monument is so much more than a pile of stone. It is a testament to a level of astronomical precision and engineering prowess that seems to defy its age. Constructed around 2,000 years ago, this giant was built to track the heavens with an accuracy that still astonishes scientists today. The western face of the pyramid aligns almost perfectly with the setting sun on two specific days of the year, August 12th and April 29th. These weren't random dates to the Teotihuacanos. They marked the beginning and the end of the agricultural cycle, a sacred calendar etched into the very landscape. But the alignments go even deeper. The entire city, a vast grid of massive avenues and towering temples, is oriented precisely 15.5 degrees east of true north. Some researchers believe this specific orientation was used to track the cyclical movements of the Pleiades star cluster, a key feature in their cosmology. This wasn't just city planning, it was a massive, functioning astronomical observatory built in stone. Yet for all its grandeur aimed at the sky, the pyramid's most captivating secrets might actually lie deep beneath it. Recent explorations have revealed something utterly unexpected and bizarre: significant quantities of liquid mercury in a chamber under the pyramid. In the ancient world, mercury was an incredibly rare and mystical substance, difficult to mine and perilous to handle. Its presence here is a profound mystery. Archaeologists and historians speculate that this shimmering, toxic metal may have been meant to represent something far greater, a sacred river or lake of the underworld. In Mesoamerican belief systems, the underworld was not a place of punishment, but a watery, spiritual realm from which life emerged and to which it returned. The mercury pooled in the darkness beneath this mountain of a pyramid could have been a symbolic recreation of that mythical domain, a powerful spiritual landmark meant to be seen only by priests and the elite during secret, sacred rituals. This find suggests a civilization with not only profound astronomical knowledge, but also a sophisticated and complex spiritual worldview, one that literally built their beliefs into the foundations of their greatest structures. And this makes the final act of Teotihuacan's story all the more haunting. Around the year 550, at the very peak of its power and influence, this city of over 100,000 people, one of the largest in the world at the time, was suddenly completely abandoned. There's no evidence of a massive invasion, no signs of a prolonged war that could explain such a total exodus. The city wasn't destroyed, it was simply left behind, its grand avenues emptying and its towering pyramids falling silent. The original name of this magnificent place and the identity of the people who built it were lost to history. The name we know it by, Teotihuacan, was given centuries later by the Aztecs, who discovered the empty ruins and believed it was the place where the gods created the universe. They called the main pyramid the Pyramid of the Sun, naming it for their own deity. We are left with a breathtaking paradox, a metropolis of immense scale and sophistication, built by a people whose name we may never know, for reasons we can only guess at, who then vanished without leaving a clear written record, their ultimate fate swallowed by time. The silent stones of Teotihuacan stand as a permanent question mark, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can be fragile, and that history is written not only in victories but also in mysteries. While the silent, sprawling mystery of Teotihuacan captivates us, another type of ancient genius reveals itself not on a valley floor, but atop a seemingly impossible mountain ridge. Journey with me now to the Andes of Peru, to a site that feels less built and more woven into the very fabric of the mountains, Machu Picchu. Perched at an altitude of nearly 8,000 feet, this citadel is a masterpiece of Incan engineering, but its true secret isn't just that it was built in such a precarious location. It's that it has managed to stay there for over 5 centuries in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. The Incas didn't just construct buildings, they designed a living entity that could dance with the Earth itself. The cornerstone of this incredible resilience lies in the very walls you see. The Incas were stonemasons without equal, and their technique is known as ashlar masonry. Each stone, from the smallest block to the massive foundation boulders, was painstakingly shaped with stone hammers and bronze tools to fit perfectly with its neighbors without any mortar. But this was far more than a quest for aesthetic perfection. The joints between these stones are not tight, rigid lines, they are intentionally slightly loose. When an earthquake strikes, the energy ripples through the ground. In a rigid building, that energy has nowhere to go, so the structure cracks and collapses. But at Machu Picchu, the stones in these brilliantly engineered walls have the freedom to shift. They actually bounce and sway during a tremor, settling back into place once the shaking stops. It's a phenomenon engineers call dynamic isolation, and it's a principle used in some of the most modern earthquake-resistant skyscrapers today. The Incas, without any written language or advanced metallurgy, developed a passive seismic damping system that has kept their sacred city intact for hundreds of years. Yet even the most brilliant wall would eventually succumb to the relentless forces of nature without a way to manage water. The Andes are subject to torrential rains, and water saturation is one of the primary causes of landslide-induced destruction. The Incas foresaw this threat with astonishing clarity. The entire site is underpinned by a deeply ingenious and multi-layered drainage system. If you look closely, you'll see channels and conduits carved directly into the stone, tracing pathways through terraces and under plazas. The foundations of the buildings themselves were constructed not directly on the bedrock, but on a deep layer of rocky rubble. This carefully engineered substratum acts like a giant sponge, allowing rainwater to filter down and away from the structures, preventing erosion and stabilizing the ground. This wasn't just simple plumbing, It was a holistic understanding of hydrogeology, ensuring the city would remain high and dry, literally anchored to the mountain. Amidst these feats of practical engineering stands one of Machu Picchu's most profound and enigmatic features, the Intihuatana stone, carved from a single piece of granite and perched at the highest point of the main ceremonial plaza. This strange pillar-like sculpture translates to the hitching post of the sun. For a long time, it was widely believed to be a sophisticated astronomical device. Its precise angles and orientation suggest it could have been used to accurately mark the two equinoxes and other celestial events. On Chinese letter days, the sun would cast no shadow at all from the stone's central pillar, a stunning demonstration of astronomical alignment. However, many researchers now believe its purpose was dual, weaving together the practical and the spiritual into an inseparable whole. It may have served as an anchor, a spiritual axis mundi connecting the three worlds of the Incan cosmos. The Honan pictured the upper world of the gods, the K pictured the world of the living, and the Uku pictured the underworld. In this view, the stone wasn't just a calendar, it was a conduit for spiritual energy, a place to literally tie the sun to the earth to ensure its return after the long winter solstice. This beautiful duality captures the essence of the Incan world, a civilization that saw no divide between science and spirit, between engineering the physical world and honoring the sacred forces within it. But the ingenuity of the Americas was not confined to the stone citadels of the south. Far to the north, in the fertile floodplains of the Mississippi River, another great city rose, one that rivaled the population of London at its peak. This was Cahokia, the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico, a bustling metropolis of mounds, plazas, and a society of staggering complexity. And at its heart lay a secret of celestial engineering, a great circle of massive cedar posts now known as Cahokia Woodhenge. Imagine standing at the center of this vast circle just before dawn on the spring equinox. You look toward a specific, solitary post positioned to the east. As the sun crests the horizon, its first brilliant ray aligns perfectly with that post, signaling a day of equal light and dark and the beginning of a new agricultural season. This was the genius of Woodhenge. It wasn't merely a circle of wood, it was a sophisticated astronomical observatory. The structure consisted of dozens of enormous cedar posts arranged in a series of concentric circles over 400 feet in diameter. Archaeologists believe a priest or sun priestess standing at the center of the circle could use the aligned posts to mark not only the equinoxes but also the summer and winter solstices with stunning precision, creating a reliable solar calendar that governed planting, harvests, and sacred ceremonies. This deep understanding of the cosmos highlights a society far more advanced than once believed. Cahokia was a nexus of trade, culture, and spiritual power, with a population that may have swelled to 20,000 people at its height around 1050 AD. Its central mound, known today as Monk's Mound, is the largest prehistoric earthen structure in the Americas, a 10-story terraced pyramid that covered over 14 acres at its base. From its summit, rulers would have looked out over a city alive with activity, a testament to human organization and belief. Yet, the story of Cahokia holds a darker, more enigmatic chapter, one revealed by a gruesome archaeological discovery. Beneath a smaller mound, designated Mound 72, excavators uncovered the remains of 272 people, many of them victims of what appears to be ritual sacrifice. In one particularly poignant burial, a high-status man was laid to rest on a cape of 20,000 shell beads, but his journey to the afterlife was accompanied by a grim entourage. In a mass grave nearby, 53 young women between the ages of 15 and 25 were found arranged in 2 neat layers, all of them showing signs of ritual strangulation or bleeding. Another pit contained the bodies of 4 men, their heads and hands removed. This evidence points to a complex and sometimes brutal belief system, where the power of the city and the favor of the gods were believed to be maintained through the ultimate offering, human life. And then, by the year 1350, this great city was all but empty. The precise reasons for Cahokia's sudden and dramatic decline remain one of North America's greatest archaeological puzzles. There is no evidence of a conquering army or a single catastrophic event. Instead, scientists point to a cascade of ecological and social pressures. Decades of deforestation to build palisades and structures like Woodhenge may have triggered severe erosion and flooding, damaging crucial farmland. Some tree ring data suggests a prolonged drought could have stretched resources to a breaking point. It's possible that social unrest, disease, or a collapse of the central authority that organized the society finally caused people to simply leave, dispersing into smaller communities and leaving the great mounds and the silent posts of Woodhenge to be swallowed by the prairie. Cahokia's legacy is a powerful reminder that brilliance and belief can sometimes walk hand in hand with darkness, and that even the most magnificent cities are not immune to the delicate balance of nature and human ambition. Now let's journey from the earthen mounds of the north to the limestone plains of the Yucatan Peninsula, where the Maya built a city that continues to astonish us not just with its visuals but with its sounds. Chichen Itza is famous for its towering pyramid, El Castillo, but its true genius is an experience you have to hear to believe. Stand at the base of the grand staircase and clap your hands once. Instead of a flat echo, you'll be answered by a crisp, descending chirp that sounds uncannily like the sacred Quetzal bird. This is no happy accident. It is the result of astonishingly precise acoustic engineering. The sound of the clap travels up the staircase, and each of the 91 steps acts as a diffuser, reflecting the sound waves back to the listener at minutely different intervals. These staggered reflections merge into a single, cascading frequency that our ears perceive as a bird call. For the Maya, the Quetzal was a divine messenger, a creature deeply associated with the serpent god Kukulkan, to whom the pyramid was dedicated. This auditory marvel was almost certainly intentional, a way to make the temple itself sing with the voice of the gods, transforming a simple human action into a profound spiritual moment. But the acoustic wonders of Chichen Itza extend far beyond the temple. Venture over to the Great Ball Court, the largest and most impressive ancient sporting arena in the Americas. This immense ice-shaped field is flanked by towering 25-foot walls that stretch over 500 feet in length. The games played here were deeply ritualistic, often tied to cosmological events and sometimes culminating in sacrifice. Yet it holds a secret that seems to defy physics. If two people stand at the opposite end zones of this vast court, they can hold a whispered conversation with perfect clarity, as if they were standing right next to each other. The massive parallel walls and the precise angle of the grandstands create a perfect whispering gallery effect, channeling sound waves along the length of the court without the faintest hint of distortion. This phenomenon would have allowed a priest or a ruler standing at one end to address players, officials, or the crowd without ever raising their voice, their words arriving as a disembodied, god-like command from across the field. It was a powerful tool for psychological and spiritual theater, making the invisible force of sound a tangible instrument of authority. Of course, the most visually stunning secret of El Castillo is the celestial clockwork that unfolds each equinox. As the sun sets on March 20th and September 22nd, a breathtaking play of light and shadow transforms the northwestern balustrade of the pyramid. The corner edges cast a series of 7 interlocking triangles of shadow down the staircase, which connect with the giant stone serpent heads at the base. Together, they form the undulating, lit-from-below body of a diamond-backed serpent, appearing to slither down from the heavens to earth. This illusion of Kukulkan descending is a masterclass in architectural astronomy, requiring an exact understanding of the sun's cyclical path and a flawless geometric execution in stone. The pyramid itself is a physical calendar. Its 4 sides each have 91 steps, which, combined with the shared platform at the top, totals 365, one for each day of the solar year. The 9 terraced levels are split by the staircase, symbolizing the 1820-day months of the Maya calendar. Every aspect of its design is a fusion of art, science, and spirituality, a stone embodiment of a world view where the cosmos, the earth, and humanity were in constant, harmonious dialogue. But for a true testament to stonework so precise it borders on the unbelievable, we must travel even further south to the high-altitude plains of Bolivia. Here, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, lie the ruins of Tiwanaku, the center of a powerful empire that flourished 1,000 years before the Inca. And within this ancient city sits its most baffling and controversial site, Puma Punku. This is not a grand pyramid or a towering temple, but rather a complex platform of shattered, monumental stone blocks that look less like they were quarried and carved, and more like they were precision manufactured by some unknown advanced technology. The first thing that strikes you is the sheer audacity of the stone itself. The builders of Puma Punku chose andesite, an exceptionally hard volcanic rock that ranks just below diamond on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. Working with this material using simple stone hammers and bronze chisels, tools archaeologists believe were available at the time, would be like trying to carve a sculpture with a spoon, a task of monumental, almost impossible difficulty. Yet they didn't just carve it, they perfected it. The blocks are cut with such flawless, razor-sharp edges and perfectly flat surfaces that they look as if they were sliced with a modern diamond-tipped saw. Many of the stones feature intricate, complex geometric patterns, H-shaped blocks with identical, recessed channels, and others with a series of perfectly drilled, small, circular holes in mathematically precise arrays. The consistency is staggering. These are not one-off artistic flourishes but appear to be standardized modular components, as if the entire structure was built from a giant, interlocking stone kit. This leads to the most persistent mystery surrounding Puma Punku. How was it actually done? The conventional explanation suggests workers used painstaking abrasion techniques, grinding the hard stone against even harder stones like quartzite with sand and water, spending countless hours to achieve each flat plane and sharp corner. While plausible, this method struggles to account for the incredible uniformity and the sheer volume of these precisely crafted blocks. For many, the precision is simply too perfect, suggesting the possibility of a lost technology or knowledge far more advanced than we've credited these ancient people with. The mystery deepens when we consider the joining methods. The massive blocks were fused together not with simple mortar, but with unique eye-shaped metal clamps. Archaeologists have found traces of a unique copper-arsenic-nickel alloy within the clamp channels. What's truly fascinating is that these clamps weren't just inserted into pre-carved slots. The evidence suggests the metal was poured into the channels in a molten state, meaning the builders were not only master stonemasons but also sophisticated metallurgists, creating custom alloys to literally weld their megaliths together. This technique provided exceptional stability, a crucial feature in a region prone to violent earthquakes. The ultimate enigma of Puma Punku, however, is its apparent age and sudden demise. Radiocarbon dating of organic material found in the deepest layers points to a primary construction phase between 500 and 600 AD, with the Tiwanaku Empire collapsing around 1000 AD. This timeline is crucial because it means this display of mind-bending engineering predates the Inca Empire and their famous stonework at sites like Machu Picchu by centuries, if not a full millennium. The people of Tiwanaku were the precursors, the original masters of Andean stonecraft. Then, around the turn of the first millennium, something catastrophic happened. A massive drought, likely lasting for decades, is thought to have collapsed their agricultural system and fueled social unrest. The city was abandoned, and its secrets were left to the harsh elements of the Altiplano. The complex was likely struck by a devastating earthquake in antiquity, which tossed these multi-ton, precision-cut blocks around like a child's toys, scattering the puzzle pieces and making it nearly impossible for us to reconstruct their original grand design. Today, Puma Punku stands less as a finished monument and more as a cryptic and scattered blueprint, a permanent question challenging our understanding of ancient innovation and leaving us to wonder if we have truly uncovered all the secrets of humanity's engineering past. While the ruins of Puma Punku present a mystery of impossible precision, our next discovery takes us to the very dawn of civilization in the Americas, to a time when the Great Pyramids of Egypt were only just beginning to rise. Nestled in the arid Supe Valley of Peru, the sacred city of Caral is a place that fundamentally rewrites our understanding of ancient history. This is not merely an old site. It is the oldest known city in the Americas, a bustling metropolis that was already over 1,000 years old when the Maya culture first began to emerge. Radiocarbon dating of reed-carrying bags found in the ruins firmly places its construction around 2600 BCE, contemporaneous with the earliest dynasties of Egypt and the great cities of Mesopotamia. But Caral's story is uniquely its own, a testament to a peaceful and profoundly innovative society that chose a path utterly different from any other cradle of civilization. What makes Caral so astonishing is not just its age, but what its people achieved, or more intriguingly, what they seemingly chose not to achieve. As you walk among the 6 massive pyramidal structures and sunken circular plazas, a profound question emerges. Archaeologists have found no trace of defensive walls, no stockpiles of weapons, and no evidence of warfare or human sacrifice. In a world where ancient history is so often written in blood and conquest, Caral stands as a remarkable, near-utopian anomaly, a complex society that appears to have flourished for centuries in a state of peaceful coexistence. Even more baffling is the complete absence of 2 things we consider fundamental to cultural development. They created no visual art, no intricate pottery, no carvings of gods or kings, no painted murals, and they had no ceramics whatsoever. Theirs was a world built entirely from stone and reed, yet they engineered monuments that have endured for more than 4.5 millennia. So how did such an advanced society function without these familiar cultural cornerstones? The answer appears to lie in sound and trade. Instead of visual art, the people of Caral may have expressed their culture and spirituality through music. Archaeologists have uncovered a collection of 32 flutes, crafted from the bones of pelicans and condors and decorated with intricate carvings of monkeys and birds. These were not simple noisemakers, they were sophisticated instruments that could produce a complex range of notes. It's a captivating thought that the plazas of this ancient city were filled not with the silent gaze upon statues, but with the sacred and communal sound of music, a unifying force that bound society together. Their true genius, however, was economic. The city's location was a strategic masterstroke, situated between the coast and the highlands. Evidence suggests the Caral-Supe civilization may have developed the first extensive trade network in the Americas, a system that moved goods across incredible distances without the use of wheeled carts or pack animals. From the highlands, they obtained the vibrant dyes of the achiote plant and the precious wood of the garango tree. From the coast, they traded for vast quantities of anchovies and sardines, which were then dried and preserved. But their most valuable commodity was something utterly unexpected: dried squash. The people of Caral were master agriculturalists, developing advanced irrigation systems to channel water from the Supe River to their fields in the desert. They cultivated cotton on an industrial scale, using it to create the fishing nets that coastal communities desperately needed. In essence, they created an economy of mutual dependency, trading their cotton and squash for fish and other goods, fostering a wide-reaching network of peaceful cooperation that sustained their society for 1,000 years. Caral's legacy is a powerful reminder that civilization does not require conquest or even conventional art to thrive. It can be built on the foundations of music, trade, and a shared vision of prosperity. From the coastal deserts of Peru, we now travel deep into the heart of the Guatemalan rainforest, where the ancient Maya city of Tikal presents a paradox of its own. Here, in a landscape drenched by seasonal rains, the greatest challenge wasn't flooding, it was survival through months of punishing drought. For centuries, we marveled at Tikal's towering temples piercing the jungle canopy, but we completely missed its true masterpiece, an engineering marvel hidden beneath our feet, one of the most sophisticated water management systems ever conceived in the ancient world. This wasn't just a city of stone, it was a city built on water, a life support system so effective it sustained a population of up to 100,000 people in an environment that should have been impossibly hostile for a metropolis of that scale. The genius of Tikal's engineers lay in their complete reimagining of the urban landscape. They transformed the entire city into a massive catchment basin. Every single plaza, every paved courtyard, and even the steep, plastered sides of their towering pyramids were designed with a slight incline, all channeling priceless rainwater away from the structures and into a vast, interconnected network of reservoirs. But they didn't just collect water, they perfected it. The Maya understood the dangers of stagnation and contamination centuries before the germ theory of disease. Their solution was a multi-stage filtration system that would be impressive even today. As water flowed from the plazas, it first passed through settling tanks where heavy sediments and debris would sink. Then it was directed through canals lined with quartz sand, a natural material that acted as a brilliant filter, removing finer impurities and even some bacteria. By the time this crystal-clear water filled the massive plaster-lined reservoirs, some holding millions of gallons, it was potable and ready to see the city through the long, rainless months. This wasn't mere infrastructure, it was the very heart of Tikal's power, allowing it to flourish and dominate the region for centuries. For a long time, we believed we had uncovered all of Tikal's secrets, that the map of this great city was complete. But the jungle guards its mysteries well. In a stunning discovery made just a few years ago, archaeologists using revolutionary LiDAR technology, which essentially uses laser pulses to see through the dense canopy, uncovered an entire royal palace complex that had been completely swallowed by the forest. This wasn't a minor annex, it was a sprawling series of structures near the city's center, a hidden nucleus of power that had been invisible to generations of researchers walking right over it. The find included a defensive wall, a pyramid, and a large residential compound, suggesting this may have been the seat of a secondary royal lineage or a fortified administrative center. This revelation fundamentally changes our understanding of Tikal's urban planning and political structure, proving that even in our modern age, we have only just begun to scratch the surface of what lies hidden. This evidence of fortification points towards a darker, final chapter for Tikal. The city's ultimate abandonment around the 9th century AD was part of the wider Maya collapse, but here the story seems particularly grim. Inscriptions on stone monuments, once thought to be purely mythological, are now being reread as records of brutal, real-world warfare. Archaeologists have unearthed mass graves and defensive earthworks that speak of escalating conflict. It appears that the very system that allowed Tikal to become a superpower, its immense population, may have also been its ultimate undoing. Centuries of construction and agriculture led to severe deforestation and soil erosion. This environmental degradation, coupled with a series of severe droughts, would have put catastrophic pressure on those brilliantly engineered reservoirs. When the water levels finally fell, the social contract broke. The warfare hinted at on the stone stelae likely erupted into full-blown, city-wide conflict, a desperate struggle for dwindling resources. The elite, including those in the newly discovered palace, may have been overthrown. The people who had mastered water for a millennium were finally defeated by its absence, leaving their silent, rain-gathering plazas and empty reservoirs to be reclaimed by the very jungle they had once conquered. Leaving the dense rainforest of Tikal behind, our quest for lost knowledge takes us to the high, cloud-swept peaks of Oaxaca, Mexico. Here, atop a mountain flattened by human hands, sits Monte Alban, the ancient capital of the Zapotec civilization. This city is a fortress of the mind, a place of profound astronomical wisdom, and one of the earliest forms of writing in the Americas. But it is also home to one of Mesoamerica's most chilling and perplexing galleries, a collection of stone slabs known as the danzantes or the dancers. At first glance, the name seems a cruel misnomer. These are not figures caught in a moment of celebration. Over 300 of these carved stones are embedded in the walls of the earliest structures, and they depict human forms in positions of extreme contortion and evident agony. Their bodies are splayed, their faces often grimacing, their limbs bent at impossible angles. For decades, scholars believed they represented captive warriors, tortured and sacrificed in a brutal display of power. But a closer examination reveals something far more complex and medically precise. Many of the figures show clear, graphic details that suggest a deep knowledge of human anatomy. Certain carvings appear to depict individuals with physical conditions like dwarfism or severe curvature of the spine. Others show what look like surgical interventions. One famous figure seems to have a precise incision across its abdomen, with an internal organ visibly protruding. This has led to a revolutionary theory that the danzantes are not a gallery of torture, but one of the earliest records of medical pathology and procedure in the ancient world. They may represent patients, perhaps elite individuals, whose conditions were documented by Zapotec priest-physicians. The contortions could be illustrations of epileptic seizures, muscle spasms, or the effects of specific diseases, serving as a teaching tool for a highly advanced medical tradition. This fascination with the human body was matched by a mastery of the cosmos. The entire city of Monte Alban is a giant astronomical instrument, meticulously aligned with the heavens. The main plaza, a vast open space flanked by pyramidal platforms, is oriented on a north-south axis, but its true genius lies in its specific deviations. Building J, a peculiar arrowhead-shaped structure that points southwest, is the most striking example. Unlike any other building at the site, its alignment does not correspond to the cardinal directions. Instead, researchers have discovered that its narrow observation shaft points directly toward the bright star Capella, as it would have set on the horizon around the time of the city's founding. Other architectural features are believed to track the zenith passage of the sun, the one day a year when the sun is directly overhead and casts no shadow, a crucial date for agricultural cycles. This precise celestial engineering allowed the Zapotec elite to wield the power of time itself, predicting seasons and orchestrating rituals that reinforced their divine connection to the universe. Their need to record these cycles and their history led to one of their greatest innovations, a fully developed writing system. The Zapotec script, which appears at Monte Alban as early as 500 BCE, is one of the earliest forms of writing in all of the Americas, predating the more famous Maya script by centuries. While we can only partially decipher its meanings, the surviving glyphs reveal a sophisticated mix of logograms and phonetic elements. They carved these symbols into stone lintels and great ceramic urns, recording the names of rulers, conquests, important calendar dates, and perhaps even passages from creation myths. This was not simple picture writing. It was a true vehicle for language, a tool for preserving knowledge across generations and solidifying the power of a state that communicated through the written word. The silent stones of Monte Alban, from the enigmatic danzantes to the star-aligned buildings and the cryptic glyphs, tell a story of a civilization that sought to understand the mysteries of the body, the cycles of the sky, and the power of the word, leaving behind a legacy as profound as it is mysterious. Yet the true lifeblood of Chan Chan, the secret that allowed a city of 50,000 people to thrive in one of the world's driest deserts, was not its grand plazas but its unseen hydraulic engineering. The Chimu were masters of water, and their system of irrigation was a breathtaking network of ingenuity. They constructed more than 80 wells, some reaching depths of 50 feet, to tap into the subterranean water table. But their true genius lay in their canals. They built a vast, intricate web of channels that diverted water from the distant Moch River, guiding it across miles of arid plains and into the city. Within the Ciudadelas, this water was meticulously managed through a complex network of small reservoirs and sunken gardens known as huachaks. These were not simple holes in the ground. They were carefully engineered to reach the humid subsoil, allowing crops to be cultivated below the level of the scorching sun and drying winds. This system effectively created a microclimate, a green and fertile oasis in the heart of the desert, turning Chan Chan into a self-sustaining agricultural powerhouse that defied its harsh environment. This golden age of adobe and water, however, was destined for a tragic and violent conclusion. In the late 15th century, the expanding Inca Empire, under the rule of the Sapa Inca Tupac Yupanqui, set its sights on the rich lands of the Chimu. The Chimu were a powerful adversary, and the conflict was fierce. The Inca army, superior in numbers and strategy, eventually laid siege to Chan Chan. Their most devastating tactic was not a direct assault on the towering walls, but a strategic strangulation of the city's lifeline. The Inca located the canals that fed Chan Chan and destroyed them, cutting off the precious water supply. Trapped in their labyrinth without water, the Chimu's resistance crumbled. The city fell, and its king, Minchancaman, was captured and taken in triumph to the Inca capital of Cusco. The Inca looted Chan Chan of its vast treasures of gold, silver, and exquisite textiles, dismantling the political and economic power of the Chimu kingdom and absorbing it into their own empire. The great adobe capital was left to the mercy of the elements, its intricate friezes slowly fading under the relentless sun, and the occasional, rare rains that would eventually begin the slow process of washing this magnificent city of labyrinths back into the dust from which it was born. Deep within the humid jungles of Chiapas, Mexico, the Maya city of Palenque holds a secret that has ignited imaginations and fierce debates for decades. It centers on one of the most magnificent tombs ever discovered in the Americas, the final resting place of the great ruler Kainish Janab Pakal, known to us as Pakal the Great. His reign, which lasted an incredible 68 years from 615 to 683 AD, was a golden age for Palenque, a time of architectural splendor and military triumph. But his greatest legacy was hidden from the world for over 1,000 years, buried deep within the heart of his masterpiece, the Temple of the Inscriptions. The discovery of this tomb in 1952 by archaeologist Alberto Ruslulia was a moment that changed history. After 4 years of carefully following a hidden stairway filled with rubble down through the pyramid's core, Ruz broke through a wall and found himself in a crypt that time had forgotten. The air was cool and still, preserved by one of the most ingenious and overlooked features of the entire structure, a sophisticated ventilation system. The builders had constructed a unique, zigzagging stone duct, often called a psychoduct, that ran from the tomb chamber all the way up to the temple floor at the top of the pyramid. This wasn't just an air shaft, it was a deliberate conduit designed to allow the spirit of the deceased king to communicate with the living priests who would perform rituals above. More practically, it regulated humidity and temperature, preventing the buildup of moist, corrosive air that would have decayed the tomb's priceless contents. It is this brilliant feat of engineering that allowed the wonders within to survive in such stunning condition, and at the center of it all was the man himself. Pakal's skeletal remains were found adorned with an exquisite mosaic jade death mask, a portrait of the king in his prime crafted from over 200 pieces of perfectly cut jade with eyes of shell and obsidian. He was surrounded by jewels and ornaments, but his body was cradled within a monumental, intricately carved sarcophagus. The 5-ton lid sealing it is where the mystery truly takes flight. To the modern eye, the central image is startling. It depicts a man, Tikal, leaning back in a seemingly reclined position. Below him curls what appears to be a fiery rocket exhaust, and he seems to be surrounded by complex mechanical components and controls. This striking visual sparked the infamous ancient astronaut theory, suggesting it portrays Tikal piloting a spacecraft into the cosmos. But to understand the truth, we must see it through the eyes of the Maya. The imagery is not a blueprint for a rocket ship. It is a masterful map of Maya cosmology, a detailed guide to the king's journey through the underworld and his subsequent rebirth. Tikal is not reclining in a cockpit. He is falling backwards into the maw of the underworld, symbolized by the skeletal face of the sun god Itzama at the very bottom of the scene. The rocket he is operating is actually the world tree, the sacred Wakachan, which connects the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens. He is not manipulating controls, but rather is its central, animating force, his life energy causing the tree to grow and flourish. The complex elements around him are not gears and engines, but stylized representations of celestial bodies, sacred serpents, and flowering motifs, all symbolizing his transformation and apotheosis. The entire lid tells the story of his death as a descent into Xibalba, the feared underworld, and his triumphant victory over its lords, culminating in his rebirth as a divine being who would take his place among the stars. This was the ultimate promise of Maya kingship, not a flight in a machine, but a spiritual journey through death to eternal life, carved in stone with a sophistication that we are only now beginning to fully decipher. While the desert kingdoms and jungle metropolises demonstrate incredible ingenuity, another civilization mastered the art of survival in one of the most demanding landscapes of all, the high desert canyons of the American Southwest. Here, the ancestral Puebloans, sometimes called the Anasazi, didn't just adapt to their environment. They integrated their entire society into the very rock itself. Their crowning achievement, the breathtaking cliff palace at Mesa Verde, is more than a collection of dwellings. It's a stunningly preserved blueprint for survival against all odds, carved directly into the cliff face. Finding shelter in the sheer canyon walls was a decision born of profound necessity. The alcoves, carved over millennia by wind and water, offered a perfect natural foundation. But the primary advantage was defensive, positioning an entire village inside a massive cliff alcove, accessible only by a series of treacherous hand and toe holds or retractable ladders, made it virtually impregnable to outside threats. A single watchman could see anyone approaching from the valley floor below long before they posed any danger. Yet, security was only half the story. The architecture was a masterclass in environmental engineering. The massive sandstone cliff acted as a giant thermal mass, absorbing the heat of the summer sun during the day and slowly releasing it through the cool desert night. In the winter, it provided a protective barrier against biting winds and snow. This natural insulation created a stable, temperate microclimate year-round, drastically reducing the energy needed to heat and cool their homes compared to settlements on the exposed mesa tops above. But a fortress, no matter how well defended or insulated, is useless without one crucial resource: water. In an arid region where rain was unpredictable and often arrived in violent downpours, the ancestral Puebloans developed a water management system of elegant simplicity. They constructed elaborate networks of canals and channels to capture every precious drop of rainwater that fell on the mesa top far above. This water was then funneled directly into meticulously built reservoirs carved into the living rock of the alcove floor and sealed with waterproof clay. These weren't just puddles, they were sophisticated, covered cisterns designed to prevent evaporation and contamination, ensuring a reliable supply of drinking water through even the longest droughts. They even engineered their masonry to participate in this system. The mortar between the stones in their walls was specially formulated to be slightly porous, allowing for passive drainage that kept the structures dry and prevented damaging erosion during heavy rains. Beyond the purely practical, every aspect of Cliff Palace was deeply infused with spiritual meaning. The architecture itself was a reflection of their cosmology. The circular, partially subterranean kivas, the sacred ceremonial chambers, were more than just rooms. Their design represented the Sipapu, the place of emergence from the underworld into this world. The position of the entire village within the earth, cradled in the womb of the cliff, reinforced their connection to the origin of life itself. The alignment of certain structures suggests they were used to track the solstices and equinoxes, with shafts of light illuminating specific niches or petroglyphs on momentous days, tying the rhythm of their ceremonies directly to the cycles of the sun. Life in the cliff was not a retreat from the world, but a harmonious existence within a sacred landscape, where every wall, every water channel, and every sunrise was part of a continuous spiritual dialogue. This makes the site's ultimate fate one of the most poignant mysteries in North American archaeology. After building and inhabiting these incredible cities for generations, the entire population of the Mesa Verde region, thousands of people, completely abandoned their homes around the year 1300. There's no evidence of a sudden catastrophe, no mass graves to suggest warfare or a rapid epidemic. Instead, the departure appears to have been a deliberate, organized exodus. The leading theory points to a perfect storm of environmental and social pressures. Tree ring data reveals a prolonged and severe drought that would have crippled their agriculture and emptied their sophisticated reservoirs. This was likely compounded by years of over-farming and deforestation on the mesa tops, leading to soil depletion and erosion. As resources dwindled, the very isolation that once protected them may have become a trap, fostering social tension and fracturing the community bonds that held their society together. They left behind their magnificent architecture, their pottery, and even some of their tools, walking away from a masterpiece of survival and heading south to join other Pueblo communities in New Mexico and Arizona, leaving the silent, sun-baked cliffs to guard the secrets of their extraordinary civilization for centuries. Now, let's journey from the protective cliff dwellings of the desert to the brilliant turquoise coastline of the Yucatan Peninsula, where the Maya built a city that defies all our expectations of an ancient seaport. Perched on a cliff overlooking the Caribbean Sea, Cholum stands as a stunning paradox, a heavily fortified city that was also a vibrant hub of international trade. While most Maya cities were hidden deep in the jungle, Cholum's builders chose a location of breathtaking strategic audacity, and its secrets reveal a civilization far more connected and ingenious than we ever imagined. The first thing that strikes you about Cholum is its imposing defensive wall. This isn't a simple barrier, it's a massive limestone fortification that stretches over 2,000 feet on the landward sides, standing up to 16 feet tall and 13 feet thick in places, effectively turning the city into a secluded peninsular fortress. On one side, the rugged jungle, on the other three, the sheer cliffs and the sea. This formidable architecture immediately begs the question, what were they protecting? The answer lies not in fear, but in fabulous wealth. Cholum was one of the most important trading ports in the entire Maya world, a vital link in a vast maritime network that stretched along the coast from modern-day Honduras all the way up to the Gulf of Mexico. Its sheltered cove provided a perfect natural harbor for the massive dugout canoes that served as their cargo ships. Within its walls, merchants traded in an incredible array of goods that flowed in from across the Americas. From the highlands came obsidian for tools and jade for sacred ornaments. From farther south came precious quetzal feathers, copper bells, and cocoa beans, which were used as currency. But perhaps the most coveted item found in abundance at Cholum was sea salt, an essential commodity for preserving food, mined from the coastal salt flats and traded inland to cities like Coba. The walls weren't just to keep people out, They were to protect the incredible treasure and economic engine within. Guiding this constant flow of maritime traffic required a navigation system as advanced as the trade itself, and evidence suggests the Maya of Chilam may have employed an ingenious form of lighthouse. The city's main structure, El Castillo, is perfectly positioned at the edge of the cliff overlooking the narrow channel into the cove. Archaeologists theorize that at night, a fire could have been lit at the top of this temple. But a simple fire would have been difficult to see from far out at sea. The revolutionary idea is that they used highly polished discs of iron ore like pyrite as mirrors. By positioning these mirrors behind the flame, they could have projected a powerful, focused beam of light far out over the water, acting as a navigational beacon to guide incoming trading vessels safely through the dangerous reef system and into the harbor. This would have been a brilliant adaptation of their known expertise in working with reflective minerals for ritual purposes, applied here to the very practical and lucrative business of commerce. At the heart of the city's spiritual life stands a building that encapsulates this unique blend of the practical and the divine, the Temple of the Frescoes. This structure serves as a beautiful, three-dimensional codex, its walls adorned with vibrant murals that have miraculously survived centuries of humidity and salt air. The paintings depict a pantheon of Maya deities, particularly those associated with rain, fertility, and commerce. But the most captivating and mysterious images are found above the doorways, carved figures of the descending god, also known as the diving god. This deity is always depicted upside down, legs bent and arms stretched out as if in mid-air plunged from the heavens toward the earth. For decades, this was interpreted as a representation of the bee god, important for the honey trade. However, given Chilam's identity as a seafaring city, many scholars now propose a different, more compelling interpretation. This descending figure could represent the setting sun, diving into the watery underworld each evening, a celestial event the city's inhabitants witnessed over the Caribbean every single day. Alternatively, it might be a protective deity associated with sailors and merchants, a spiritual guardian for those diving into the unknown waters of commerce or literally diving for precious spondylus shells. This imagery perfectly captures Chilam's essence, a city that looked both to the sea for its wealth and to the heavens for its protection. This powerful combination of spiritual faith and strategic location granted Chilam an extraordinary longevity that few other Maya cities enjoyed. While the great interior metropolises like Tikal and Palenque had already been swallowed by the jungle for centuries, Chilam remained a thriving, inhabited community well into the Spanish colonial period. Its continued existence is a testament to its adaptability. When the old inland trade routes collapsed during the Maya decline, Chilam's maritime connections kept it alive and economically relevant. It became a crucial link between the remaining Maya communities and new groups arriving by sea. Spanish explorers documented seeing Chilam still occupied and functioning as a ceremonial center as late as the 15th century, its light still guiding ships along the coast long after the classical Maya world had faded into history. Chilam's final secret is its enduring legacy, a testament to a civilization that mastered not only the jungle but also the sea, creating a coastal sanctuary that outlasted empires. Leaving the coastal fortifications of Chilam behind, we venture back into the heart of the Maya world, to a city celebrated not for its size or its defenses, but for its profound intellectual and artistic achievements. Nestled in a fertile valley in western Honduras, Copan was the Paris or the Florence of the ancient Maya, a city where art, science, and history were fused into stone with a level of refinement unmatched anywhere else. And its crown jewel, the single greatest textual source from the entire Maya civilization, is the monumental hieroglyphic stairway. This is not merely a staircase, it is a library carved from stone, a massive history book containing over 2,000 individual glyphs, making it the longest known pre-Columbian inscription in the entire Americas. The scale of the stairway is staggering in its ambition. It ascends the heart of the city's main acropolis, a massive flight of 63 steps, each one completely covered in intricately carved glyphs. The entire narrative is a single, continuous text, a dynastic history meant to immortalize the lineage of Copan's kings and their divine right to rule. The artistic skill required for this project is almost beyond comprehension. Every one of the 2,000+ glyphs is a miniature masterpiece, carved with a fluid, calligraphic elegance that suggests the hand of a master scribe rather than a simple stoneworker. The depth of the carving is so precise and so consistent that even after centuries of exposure, the stories remain remarkably legible. This was a public monument designed to awe its citizens and visitors, a permanent and undeniable declaration of the power and sophistication of Copan's royal house, asserting that their authority was woven into the very fabric of time and written in the language of the gods. Contained within this stone tapestry is the complete history of Copan's dynasty, a succession of 16 kings ruling for an incredible 4 centuries from 426 to 820 AD. The text meticulously records their accessions, their great military victories, their pivotal rituals, and their relationships with the gods. It begins with the founder, a mysterious figure named Kainish Yaks Kayak Mo, or Great Sun Green Quetzalmakor, who the inscription claims arrived from a distant place to establish a new order. We learn of the dazzling successes like the reign of the 12th king, Smoke-Amix, who ruled for 67 years and oversaw a massive expansion of the city's influence. But the stairway does not shy away from recording a moment of profound crisis. It tells the story of the 13th ruler, Waxaclajun Yubakayawil, who was captured in battle and ritually sacrificed by the rival city of Quirigua, a shocking and catastrophic event that sent Copan into a temporary political tailspin. This willingness to inscribe a defeat alongside the victories reveals a sophisticated historical consciousness, an understanding that true history is a record of all pivotal events, not just propaganda. The very ability to read this history today hinges on one of the Maya's most breathtaking intellectual achievements, their incredibly complex and precise calendar system. The hieroglyphs are not just words, they are anchored to exact dates through the Maya long count calendar, a system so accurate it could measure time in uninterrupted cycles for millions of years. Each major event on the stairway is pinned to a specific day, calculated from a mythical starting point in August of 3114 BC. To write and understand this history required a class of scribes and priests who were masters of advanced mathematics, including the concept of zero, a revolutionary abstract idea that wouldn't appear in Europe for centuries. They used a Vigesimal or base 20 system to make their calculations, allowing them to plot celestial cycles, predict eclipses, and coordinate their rituals with an accuracy that still astonishes astronomers. The hieroglyphic stairway is the ultimate expression of this, a monument where art, history, and mathematical genius converge to create a permanent record of human achievement. Yet, for all its intended permanence, the stairway itself has become a complex archaeological puzzle. Sometime after Copan's decline, a massive earthquake or landslide caused the entire structure to collapse, sending the 2,000 carved blocks tumbling into a hopeless jumble. Early 20th century attempts to restore it, while well-intentioned, often placed the blocks out of order, inadvertently creating a giant stone crossword puzzle with a scrambled narrative. For decades, the history it contained was a beautiful but indecipherable mess. Modern epigraphers, the detectives of ancient writing, have undertaken the painstaking task of redecoding the text, using clues from other Maya sites and advanced photographic techniques to slowly piece the true story back together, block by block, glyph by glyph. This ongoing work reminds us that the secrets of the past are not always handed to us easily. They require patience, brilliance, and a deep respect for the original creators whose voices we are still struggling to hear across the vast expanse of centuries. While the Maya of Copan were recording their history in elegant stone glyphs on the faraway northern coast of Peru, another civilization was telling its stories not on stairs but on the very walls of its sacred pyramids. The Moche culture, which flourished between 1 and 800 AD, built their capital at the foot of a solitary mountain, a place we now call the Huacas de Moche. And here, the Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Moon, holds secrets that are both artistically breathtaking and deeply unsettling, a testament to a society that mastered its harsh environment while enacting rituals of profound power. The pyramid itself is not a single construction but a layered history, a sacred onion of adobe bricks. The Moche would ritually seal and then rebuild their temple in grand phases, perhaps with each new ruler or significant ceremonial cycle. And with each new layer, they covered the old walls with a brilliant, protective coat of white plaster, creating a vast blank canvas. Upon this canvas, teams of artists painted elaborate, multi-colored murals depicting a rich and complex mythological world. These weren't mere decorations, they were a public declaration of faith and cosmology. The most common and powerful figure is the decapitator god, a fearsome, fanged deity often shown holding a crescent-shaped ceremonial knife, the tumi, in one hand and a severed human head in the other. This figure is frequently accompanied by otherworldly creatures, anthropomorphic fish, snarling felines, and marching armies of animated skeletons. These murals served as a graphic, instructional narrative for the populace, reinforcing the power of the gods and the priestly elite who interpreted their will, ensuring the community understood the spiritual forces that governed their world, from the fertility of the ocean to the terror of drought. The stories on the walls were not merely symbolic, they were a direct prelude to the rituals that took place in the plaza at the pyramid's base. Archaeological excavations here have uncovered evidence that is as conclusive as it is grim. In a patio area adjacent to the Huaca, researchers found the remains of over 70 individuals, almost all young men. The skeletal evidence tells a clear and brutal story. Their bones show signs of severe trauma, ribs severed, shoulder blades dislocated, and vertebrae cracked in ways that strongly suggest they were systematically slaughtered. Crucially, many of the bones show cut marks consistent with decapitation and dismemberment. This was not haphazard violence, it was highly controlled, ritualized sacrifice. The leading theory, supported by chemical analysis of the victims' teeth, suggests these were not local Moche people but captured warriors from rival valleys. Their sacrifice, performed in the shadow of the murals depicting the decapitator god, was likely seen as the ultimate offering to appease the deities, a desperate and brutal transaction meant to ensure life-giving water and stability for the Moche state. This dark spiritual practice was balanced by an almost supernatural mastery of the physical world. To sustain a large population in a coastal desert that receives less than half an inch of rain per year, the Moche became hydraulic engineers without equal. They constructed massive canals, some stretching over 75 miles, diverting water from the rivers flowing down from the Andes into an intricate web of irrigation channels that fed vast fields of corn, beans, squash, and peanuts. Their understanding of hydraulic pressure and gradient was so advanced that some of their ancient canals are still in use by farmers today. This system transformed barren desert into lush, productive farmland, creating the agricultural surplus that allowed their society to specialize, flourish, and build their monumental pyramids. Their genius extended from the earth to the forge. The Moche were the premier metallurgists of the ancient Americas, and the treasures found in tombs like that of the Lord of Sapon reveal a technical sophistication that is simply staggering. They didn't just work with simple gold and copper, they pioneered complex alloys and developed techniques that were centuries ahead of their time. They mastered depletion gilding, a process where a finished object made of a gold and copper alloy is treated with acidic plant juices. The acids would oxidize and remove the copper from the surface layer, leaving behind a pure, shimmering gold finish that masked the less valuable metal underneath. They were experts at smelting and annealing, allowing them to create strong, durable tools and weapons. But their most beautiful creations were for ritual and status. Intricate nose rings, massive crescent-shaped tumi knives, ornate headdresses and ear spools, all decorated with intricate imagery of their gods and myths. These objects were more than wealth. They were a physical manifestation of divine power, worn by the priest kings who mediated between the world of humans and the world of the gods, connecting the brutal rituals of the Pyramid Plaza with the brilliant, luminous art that defined their enduring legacy. Far to the south of the Machu's painted pyramids, in the stark, riverless expanse of Peru's Nazca Desert, lies a city that defies every conventional idea of what a city should be. This is Cahuachi, the spiritual capital of the Nazca culture, and its very existence is a profound riddle. For starters, it lacks the one thing you would expect to find in any major population center: homes. Archaeologists have excavated vast areas of this 40-square-mile site and found almost no evidence of residential buildings, no neighborhoods where a permanent population would have lived, cooked, and slept. Instead, what rises from the dusty plain is a breathtaking complex of over 40 immense adobe mounds, grand plazas, and sophisticated temples. Cahuachi was not a city of the living. It was a ceremonial metropolis built for the gods, a destination for pilgrims, and the sacred heart of a culture known for one of the world's greatest artistic enigmas. This vast ceremonial center was the undeniable focal point of Nazca life, and its purpose was intrinsically linked to the very survival of the people in one of the world's driest deserts. The Nazca inhabited a region where water was more precious than gold, and their entire society was organized around appeasing the deities who controlled this life-giving resource. The massive pyramids at Cahuachi, some standing over 90 feet tall, were not tombs for kings but platforms for high-altitude rituals. From their summits, priests could conduct ceremonies closer to the mountain gods, the Apu, who were believed to hold the water in their peaks and release it into the rivers. Excavations have uncovered enormous quantities of offerings left at these temples, beautifully painted pottery depicting mythical beings, exquisite textiles, and most tellingly spondylus shells. These spiny, orange shells had to be gathered by divers from the warm waters off the coast of Ecuador, over 800 miles away. Their presence in such huge numbers at a desert shrine speaks to their incredible value. The Nazca believed the spondylus shell had the magical power to summon life-giving rain from the ocean, making it the ultimate offering in their desperate negotiations with the unpredictable climate. The flow of people into this vacant city of temples provides some of the most compelling evidence for its role. This was not a place you lived, it was a place you visited on a sacred journey. Archaeologists have found vast areas that appear to be temporary campsites surrounding the ceremonial core, complete with the remains of simple, perishable shelters and cooking hearths. The sheer volume of broken pottery found at the site is also a key clue. It consists primarily of decorated ceremonial vessels, not the plain, utilitarian ware used in everyday home life. This suggests that pilgrims from across the Nazca region would travel to Cahuachi for major festivals, carrying their finest offerings. They would camp in the surrounding desert, participate in the rituals, use their special pottery for feasts, and then deliberately break them as a final offering, leaving the sacred fragments behind when they returned to their actual homes in the nearby valleys. Cahuachi thrived on this cycle of temporary occupation, a spiritual magnet that pulsed with activity during holy periods and fell silent in between. And this brings us to the most famous mystery of all, the Nazca Lines. The relationship between the sprawling geoglyphs on the desert floor and the ceremonial center in the hills is one of profound connection. The two are not separate wonders, they are parts of a single, integrated sacred landscape. Many of the long, straight lines etched into the desert pavement point directly toward Cahuachi, like spiritual pathways leading pilgrims to the city. Others align with the points on the horizon where the sun and other celestial bodies would rise and set during solstices and equinoxes. The most accepted theory is that the lines were not meant to be seen from above by gods in spacecraft, but to be walked upon by people in a state of ritual procession. These processions, moving along the lines toward Cahuachi, would have been a form of participatory worship, a physical enactment of a spiritual journey that culminated in the ceremonies performed on the Great Pyramids. The entire desert was their cathedral, and the lines were the aisles leading to its altar. The final act of Cahuachi's story is as mysterious as its purpose. Around 400 AD, after nearly 1,000 years of use, this great ceremonial center was deliberately and carefully abandoned. There are no signs of invasion, no evidence of warfare, no mass graves to suggest a catastrophic epidemic. Instead, the evidence points to a slow, solemn, and respectful closing ceremony. The Nazca people themselves seem to have sealed their most sacred temple. They filled the rooms of the Grand Pyramid with clean, sterile sand, and then buried the entire structure under a massive layer of adobe bricks, effectively mummifying their holiest site in a protective cocoon. The most likely culprit was a climate catastrophe. Geological evidence reveals that the region was struck by a series of devastating floods and massive earthquakes, likely triggered by a super El Niño event. These natural disasters would have obliterated the delicate irrigation systems that sustained Nazca agriculture in the valleys below. The people may have interpreted these disasters as a sign that the gods had abandoned them or that their rituals at Cahuachi were no longer effective. They left their ceremonial heart behind, not in a panicked flight, but in a solemn procession, burying their past to face an uncertain future, leaving the silent, buried pyramids and the vast, enigmatic lines as a permanent monument to a faith that was ultimately tested by the very forces of nature it sought to control. Our journey now takes us to the humid, swampy lowlands of the Mexican Gulf Coast, to the very cradle of Mesoamerican civilization itself. Here, among the slow-moving rivers and dense mangroves, the Olmec culture laid the foundation for everything that would follow: the Maya, the Zapotec, the Aztec. And their greatest and most mysterious legacy is found at the ancient city of La Venta, a collection of colossal stone heads so imposing and so baffling that they have sparked debates and captured imaginations for over a century. The sheer scale of these sculptures is the first thing that defies belief. Carved from a single piece of solid basalt, the largest of these heads stands over 9 feet tall and weighs an astonishing 40 tons. That's heavier than a fully loaded semi-truck. The stone itself did not come from La Venta. It was quarried from the Tuxtla Mountains, a brutal trek of over 60 miles through some of the most challenging terrain imaginable: swampy marshlands, tangled jungle, and wide, unpredictable rivers. The Olmec accomplished this Herculean task without the wheel, without draft animals like horses or oxen, and without metal tools. So how did they do it? The prevailing theory is a breathtaking display of coordinated labor and simple genius. They likely used a combination of rope rollers, earthen ramps, and massive log sledges. Hundreds, perhaps even thousands of workers would have manually inched these monolithic slabs onto sledges, then painstakingly pulled them along, constantly placing and replacing rollers made of greased logs in front of the sledge to ease its passage. For river crossings, they probably built enormous raft-like barges, using the current to assist their journey. This wasn't just art, it was a monumental statement of political and spiritual power, a declaration that a ruler could command the labor of an entire society to create a permanent symbol of their authority. The features carved into these massive heads are what truly ignite the imagination and for decades have fueled intense controversy. The faces are undeniably realistic and individualistic. Each one is a unique portrait, complete with distinct expressions, headgear, and even ear ornaments. But it is their broad, flat noses, their full lips, and their strong jawlines that led early 20th century observers to propose a radical and now largely discredited theory. that these were depictions of African explorers who somehow crossed the Atlantic and imparted their knowledge to the Olmec. Modern archaeology and genetics have thoroughly debunked this diffusionist idea. There is no evidence of transoceanic contact at this time. Instead, the features are now understood as a celebration of the local indigenous phenotype, perhaps even exaggerated for artistic effect to convey ideals of power, strength, and authority. The heads are now believed to be portraits of powerful Olmec rulers, each one immortalized in stone to project their enduring influence and divine connection long after their death. The closed, slightly downturned mouths and stoic expressions project an aura of immense, unshakable power, forever watching over the domain they once ruled. Beyond the heads, La Venta holds another, equally profound secret that would echo through the next 3,000 years of Mesoamerican history. Archaeologists excavating the site discovered a very specific type of ceremonial court and, alongside it, rubber balls. This is the earliest solid evidence of the Mesoamerican ball game, a ritual sport that was far more than a simple pastime. The Olmec, whose name itself means rubber people in the Aztec language, likely had access to the natural latex trees in the region and pioneered the process of vulcanization, mixing the sap with morning glory juice to create a resilient, bouncy rubber. The game they played on their eye-shaped courts was a brutal and deeply symbolic contest, often representing the eternal struggle between light and darkness, life and death. For the Olmec, it may have been a way to ritually enact cosmological battles, with the bouncing rubber ball symbolizing the movement of the sun or other celestial bodies across the sky. This invention, the rubber ball, and the sacred game that accompanied it, became one of the Olmec's most enduring exports, a cultural touchstone adopted and adapted by every major civilization that came after them, from the Maya to the Aztec. At La Venta, we are witnessing the very origin of a tradition that would become central to the identity of an entire continent, a ritual born in the humid lowlands that would eventually be played in grand stone arenas across the land. Leaving the humid lowlands of the Olmec behind, we travel north to the highlands of central Mexico, to a city whose legacy is carved in stone and steeped in one of the most powerful myths of the ancient world. This is Chola, the legendary capital of the Toltec Empire, and its most iconic sentinels are a row of four massive, impassive figures known as the Atlantean warriors. Carved from four basalt columns, each over 15 feet tall, these giants are a masterpiece of stoic strength. They stand atop Pyramid B, their backs ramrod straight, their arms rigid at their sides, each clutching a bundle of darts in one hand and an atlatl or spear thrower in the other. They wear elaborate pillared headdresses and chest plates shaped like stylized butterflies, symbols of the soul and of resurrection. For centuries, it was believed these colossal figures served as pillars, holding aloft the roof of the great temple that once stood at the pyramid's summit. They were the unwavering supports of both the physical and the spiritual world, embodiments of the ideal Toltec soldier, disciplined, powerful, and eternally vigilant. These stone giants are intrinsically linked to the most important figure in all of Toltec mythology, the god King Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. According to legend, it was Acatl Quetzalcoatl, a pious and wise priest-king who founded Chola and established a golden age of peace and artistic flourishing. He was said to have forbidden human sacrifice, advocating instead for the offering of butterflies, snakes, and birds. The Atlantean figures, with their butterfly emblems, may represent the loyal warriors of this peaceful and enlightened ruler. Their very posture, with their weapons held at the ready but not in active aggression, could symbolize this era of order and defensive strength under Quetzalcoatl's benevolent rule. They stand as silent, stone witnesses to a time when Chola was hailed as a center of culture and refinement, a reputation that would echo through the ages and inspire later empires, most notably the Aztecs, who revered the Toltecs as the ultimate exemplars of civilization. However, the archaeological evidence unearthed at Chichen tells a far darker and more complex story, one that stands in stark contrast to the peaceful legend. Excavations around the central pyramid and the main plaza have revealed chilling proof of mass human sacrifice on a scale that shocked researchers. A series of dedicated deposits were found containing the carefully arranged skulls and bones of dozens of individuals, many of them young men and children. Most haunting of all was the discovery of a tes ampantli, a skull rack altar, where the heads of sacrificial victims were publicly displayed on wooden stakes as an offering to the gods and a grim warning to enemies. The skeletal remains show clear evidence of decapitation and heart extraction, the standard rituals of Mesoamerican sacrifice. This evidence paints a picture not of a city that rejected blood offerings, but of one that fully embraced them, likely in an effort to appease the warlike god Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, who was the great rival and eventual usurper of the peaceful Quetzalcoatl in Toltec myth. This duality, the enlightened myth and the brutal reality, lies at the heart of Chelah's mystery. The city's influence throughout Mesoamerica was immense, but it was an influence born from both its artistic achievements and its military might. Toltec artisans were renowned for their skill in working with obsidian, pottery, and textiles, and their distinctive artistic style, characterized by chacmuls, reclining figures holding offering bowls, serpent columns, and Atlantean figures, was copied from the Yucatan to the Valley of Mexico. This widespread adoption of Toltec motifs suggests a powerful cultural and economic network, a sphere of influence that may have been established as much through trade and emulation as through conquest. The legend of Quetzalcoatl's peaceful reign and his subsequent exile from Chelah, traveling eastward on a raft of serpents with a promise to return one day, became one of the most enduring narratives in the region, a story so potent that it would later shape the very course of history when the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma initially mistook the arriving Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés. Returning god, the ultimate fate of Chelah remains a subject of debate, but the evidence points toward a violent and fiery end. Around the middle of the 12th century, large sections of the city, including its great ceremonial center, were deliberately burned. The colossal Atlantean warriors were themselves toppled from their lofty perch, their stone bodies crashing down onto the pyramid steps where they lay buried for centuries. This was not an accidental fire, it was a conflagration of conquest or internal rebellion. The city was sacked and abandoned, its once great palaces left to crumble. The fall of Chelah created a power vacuum in central Mexico that would last for centuries until the rise of the Aztec Empire, which would consciously model itself on the glorious, half-remembered, and deeply contradictory legacy of the Toltec capital. The silent, reassembled Atlanteans that stand guard today are thus a powerful monument to this duality. They represent both the idealized, golden age of Quetzalcoatl and the brutal, sacrificial state that ultimately fell to the torch, a permanent reminder that the line between myth and history is often as complex and layered as the ruins themselves. High in the arid expanse of what is now New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloan people engineered a marvel that defies the very emptiness of the landscape. Chaco Canyon was the undeniable center of their world, but its influence stretched far beyond the canyon walls through an astonishing and mysterious feat of engineering, a vast network of perfectly straight roads. These were not mere footpaths worn by time and travel. These were deliberately constructed highways some 30 feet wide, carved directly into the desert bedrock. They ran for miles in arrow straight lines, undeterred by minor obstacles, cutting through sandstone cliffs and crossing vast open spaces with a purposeful direction that suggests a function far more profound than simple commerce. At the heart of this network lies Pueblo Bonito, the crown jewel of Chaco. This massive great house, with its semicircular design of over 600 rooms and dozens of kivas, is a masterpiece of architectural astronomy. Its entire layout is a mirror of the cosmos. The straight back wall of the structure is aligned perfectly along a north-south axis, while the front-facing curved wall aligns with the east-west movement of the sun. But the precision goes even deeper. A single window in the structure and a specific petroglyph spiral carved on a cliff face behind it work together to create a celestial dagger of light. At the summer solstice, a single sliver of sunlight pierces the center of the spiral, and at the winter solstice, two perfectly symmetrical daggers of light bracket it on either side. This was a sophisticated calendar in stone and light, allowing the Chaconne priests to predict the changing seasons with absolute accuracy, orchestrating the agricultural and ceremonial cycles of their entire civilization. The purpose of these great roads, which radiate out from Choco to outlying communities over 60 miles away, remains one of archaeology's great puzzles. They are far wider than necessary for trade, and their construction would have required a massive, coordinated effort. The most compelling theory is that they formed a sacred landscape, connecting the spiritual center of Pueblo Bonito to distant great houses and natural features in a vast, interconnected web of ritual significance. Pilgrims may have traveled these roads for major ceremonies, their journey itself a form of worship, walking these straight paths that connected the earthly world to the orderly heavens above. The roads also reinforce Chaco's role as a central source of political and religious authority, a physical manifestation of its power reaching out to touch even the most remote communities. This connection to a wider world is stunningly confirmed by the objects found within Pueblo Bonito's rooms. In one chamber, archaeologists made a discovery that forever changed our understanding of Choco's reach: the remains of scarlet macaws. These vibrant tropical birds are native to the rainforests of Central America, over 1,000 miles away. Their presence in the high desert of New Mexico is astounding. These birds were not just trade items, they were living, breathing symbols of immense spiritual power. Their brilliant red and blue feathers were associated with the sun and the sky, prized for use in sacred rituals and ceremonies. The logistical feat of keeping these delicate birds alive on such an epic journey across deserts and mountains speaks to the importance of the spiritual economy that flowed along those straight roads, bringing the essence of the southern tropics to the dry ceremonial heart of the Southwest. The scale of this operation suggests a society of remarkable complexity and organization, one that could marshal resources for massive construction projects and sustain long-distance trade networks. Yet, by the middle of the 12th century, this great center was gradually abandoned. A combination of factors likely contributed to its decline, including a prolonged drought that would have put immense strain on the already marginal environment. The very ceremonies that once ensured balance may have ultimately failed in the face of a changing climate. The people moved on, leaving behind the silent, symmetrical walls of Pueblo Bonito and the enigmatic roads that stretch into the empty desert, permanent lines on the land that lead to a center of power whose full purpose we may never completely understand. Deep within the impenetrable rainforest of northern Guatemala, far from the famous classic-era sites like Tikal, lies a city so ancient and so vast that it forces us to completely rewrite the story of the Maya. This is El Mirador, the lookout point, and it is not merely a precursor to the great Maya cities we know. It was a sprawling, sophisticated metropolis that reached its zenith over 1,000 years before them. At its heart stands La Danta, a pyramid so monumental that it holds the title of the largest in the world by volume, a man-made mountain consuming more material than the Great Pyramid of Giza. To stand before it is to feel a profound sense of temporal dislocation. This colossus was already an ancient, revered ruin when the kings of Tikal were just beginning their own ascent to power. The true genius of El Mirador, however, is not just its scale but its artistry, revealed in stunning detail at a complex known as the Tiger Pyramid. Here, archaeologists have uncovered some of the most elaborate and well-preserved stucco friezes from the ancient world. These aren't simple decorations, they are intricate mythological narratives molded from lime plaster, a testament to a sophisticated theological tradition that was already fully formed. One of the most breathtaking depictions is a scene from the Popol Vuh, the Maya creation myth, featuring the hero twins swimming in the underworld surrounded by pools of water and monstrous deities. The fact that this story was being illustrated in such grand, public fashion centuries before the classic period proves that the core of Maya spirituality was not a later development but was established at the very foundation of their civilization. These friezes were once painted in vibrant shades of red, blue, and green, making the pyramids not just monuments of power but dazzling, colorful storybooks for a largely non-literate populace. This explosion of artistic and architectural ambition points to something even more revolutionary, the evidence of early state formation that completely upends old theories. For decades, scholars believed the preclassic Maya lived in simple, egalitarian villages, only evolving into complex, hierarchical kingdoms with divine kings around 250 AD. El Mirador shatters that timeline. The city's layout, with its massive causeways connecting monumental architectural groups, its elaborate water management systems, and the clear segregation of elite and commoner residences, reveals a society of staggering social complexity. It was a true state, likely governed by a powerful, centralized authority that could command the labor of tens of thousands of workers to shape the jungle into a capital city. This wasn't a slow evolution, it was a dramatic, precocious leap into urbanization that happened centuries earlier than anyone suspected, making El Mirador the first great Maya superpower, a precedent that all subsequent cities would strive to emulate. The city's eventual abandonment around 150 AD is as mysterious as its rise. There are no signs of a violent invasion. Instead, the evidence points to a cascade of internal pressures. The very ambition that built El Mirador may have been its undoing. Decades of intensive construction and agriculture likely led to widespread deforestation and soil exhaustion in the surrounding area. This environmental degradation, coupled with a possible prolonged drought, would have crippled the agricultural surplus needed to sustain its enormous population. The social contract that bound people to the ruling elite likely fractured under the strain of food shortages and economic collapse. People didn't die out, they simply left, dispersing into smaller communities and leaving their gargantuan city to be swallowed by the relentless jungle. El Mirador's legacy is a humbling lesson in the fragile balance of power and nature, a reminder that even the greatest of civilizations can be built on a foundation that nature can, in time, reclaim. Leaving behind the jungle-shrouded colossus of El Mirador, our journey through the secrets of the Americas now takes us to a very different kind of wonder, one that trades overwhelming scale for mind-bending precision. We travel to the Oaxaca Valley, to the Zapotec city of Mitla, a place whose name itself means the place of the dead. But don't let that Sama title fool you. This was a vibrant center of power and spirituality, celebrated not for the height of its pyramids but for the breathtaking intricacy of its walls. While other cities impressed with their monuments reaching for the heavens, Mitla's genius is horizontal, a masterclass in stonework that covers every surface in a mesmerizing tapestry of geometric perfection. The moment you step into Mitla's main plaza, you are surrounded by a visual symphony of stone. The facades of its palaces are completely covered in thousands of individually cut, polished stones, each one meticulously fitted into dazzling, repetitive geometric patterns. These are not carvings on a wall, the patterns are the wall itself, constructed using a technique known as zikilkoliukwi or the Greca. This method involves cutting small, perfectly shaped stones, often trachyte, a dense volcanic rock, into precise, interlocking fretwork designs. The most common pattern is the stepped fret, a complex design that looks like an endless, twisting labyrinth frozen in stone. The true miracle of this construction is the fact that these intricate mosaics were assembled entirely without mortar. The stability of these vast walls relies solely on the impeccable accuracy of each cut. The stones fit together with such exacting precision that, as the local saying goes, you cannot even slip the blade of a knife between them. This represents a zenith of stonecraft, a patient, generations-long project that required a profound understanding of geometry, immense artistic vision, and a level of skill that continues to baffle modern engineers and masons. This stone tapestry was far more than just decorative art. It was a deeply spiritual text written in a language of patterns. For the Zapotec, these geometric designs were not abstract. They were a direct representation of the cosmos and a powerful symbol of their most revered deity, Cahokia, the god of rain and lightning. The intricate, zigzagging patterns are believed to symbolize the terrifying and life-giving path of lightning splitting the sky, a sacred force that connected the earthly realm to the divine. The endless, maze-like patterns also evoked the serpent, another potent symbol of spiritual power and renewal. To walk through these courtyards was to be enveloped by these sacred symbols, to be physically inside a representation of the divine order. The sheer effort required to create this environment, the countless hours of labor by master artisans, was itself the ultimate act of devotion, a permanent offering to the gods that also demonstrated the immense power and prestige of the city's rulers. Beneath these ornate palaces lies another, more enigmatic layer of Mittler's secrets, a network of unique cruciform tombs. Accessed by narrow stairways leading down from the main courtyards, these burial chambers are shaped like a Greek cross, with a central room branching off into 4 arms. Their architectural form is unique in all of Mesoamerica, and their walls are lined with the same breathtaking Greco mosaics found above ground, proving that this sacred art was meant to accompany and protect the elite in the afterlife. These were not simple graves, they were subterranean palaces for the departed, designed to ensure a noble, smooth passage into the next world and their continued status within it. The story of these tombs, however, holds a final, fascinating twist that speaks to the shifting tides of power. In the centuries just before the Spanish arrival, evidence suggests that Mittler was no longer solely a Zapotec city. Intricate Mixtec-style polychrome pottery and exquisite gold jewelry, crafted in a distinctly different artistic tradition, have been found within these very tombs. This points to a period of significant Mixtec influence and possibly even a peaceful takeover or a strategic alliance between the two cultures. The Mixtec, renowned as the finest goldsmiths in Mesoamerica, may have come to venerate Mittler as a sacred site, adopting it as their own religious center and continuing the tradition of burying their own high-status individuals in these hallowed chambers. This cultural fusion makes Mittler's final days a rich tapestry of its own, a place where 2 great civilizations intertwined, their artistic and spiritual legacies merging within the ancient, geometric walls just before the entire world they knew was forever changed by conquest. Now we turn from the silent stone poetry of Mittler to the deep, tangled jungles of the Patane, where perhaps the greatest geopolitical drama of the ancient Maya world played out over centuries. This was not a conflict of a single battle, but a relentless, generations-long Cold War between 2 superpowers that shaped the destiny of the entire region. On one side, the established, monumental city of Tikal, its towering temples a symbol of its long-held dominance, and on the other, the ambitious, strategic powerhouse of Calakmul, the enigmatic kingdom of the snake. Their epic rivalry, once known only through vague hints, has been spectacularly illuminated by the recent decipherment of glyphs, revealing a narrative of shifting alliances, psychological warfare, and a struggle for the very soul of the Maya lowlands. For generations, the dominant historical narrative was written largely from Tikal's perspective, painting it as the unchallenged cultural heart of the Maya world. Calakmul, discovered later and harder to access, was long considered a remote secondary player. That all changed when epigraphers finally cracked the code on hundreds of inscriptions from both cities and their vast networks of vassal states. They uncovered a story of a deliberate and brilliantly executed strategy by Calakmul's Snake dynasty to systematically dismantle Tikal's sphere of influence. This wasn't just about territory, it was a battle for control of the most vital resource in the jungle economy, manpower and the allegiance of the smaller city-states that lay between them. Calakmul's kings proved to be master political tacticians, forging a vast alliance network known as the Snakehead Consortium, which at its peak included powerful cities like Caracol, Naranjo, and El Peru. This coalition effectively placed Tikal in a strategic stranglehold, isolating it politically and economically for over a century. The warfare between them was as much about perception as it was about physical conquest. A pivotal moment in this struggle occurred in 562 AD, when Calakmul's king, Sky Witness, and his ally Caracol orchestrated a devastating defeat of Tikal's forces. The inscriptions at Caracol celebrate this not just as a military victory, but as a Star War event, a specific type of conquest that carried immense ritual and cosmological significance. The victors didn't just defeat Tikal's army, they breached the city itself, desecrating its temples, capturing and likely sacrificing its divine ruler, Double Bird. This humiliation was profound. For the next 130 years, Tikal entered a period known as its hiatus, a dark age where it erected no dated monuments, its royal lineage seemingly broken and its spirit crushed. It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare, proving that Calakmul's power could extinguish even the light of the most glorious sun. Yet the story does not end there. The deciphered texts also reveal the incredible resilience of Tikal's royal house. After more than a century of subjugation, a new king emerged, a leader who would become legendary, Jasor Chan Kayawil I. In 695 AD, in a stunning reversal of fortunes, he confronted and defeated Calakmul's forces in a decisive battle. The victory was so complete, so cathartic for Tikal, that Jasor Chan Kayawil commemorated it by building the iconic Temple One, his mighty funerary pyramid that still defines the Tikal skyline today. Within its depths, he was buried surrounded by jade and treasures, a king who had avenged his city and restored its glory. This back and forth, this ebb and flow of power documented in the stone texts, reveals a political landscape far more dynamic and complex than we ever imagined, a world of fragile alliances, bitter grudges, and resurgent dynasties. Ultimately, the reason for the decline of both these titans may be found not in their political maneuvering, but in the very land they fought over. While they were consumed with their rivalry, a slower, more insidious threat was developing beneath their feet. Paleoclimatologists studying sediment cores from nearby lakes have uncovered a disturbing timeline. The centuries of the classic Maya peak, coinciding with the Tikal-Calakmul struggle, were actually a period of unusually abundant rainfall. This climatic golden age allowed populations to boom and supported the immense agricultural output needed to fuel their wars and monument building. However, the data shows a sharp and dramatic shift beginning around the 8th century. A series of intense, multi-decadal droughts gripped the region, crippling maize production and placing unimaginable strain on the social order. The reservoirs of Tikal and the agricultural fields supporting Calakmul's vast population would have slowly emptied. The intricate web of alliances, built on promises of prosperity and protection, would have frayed under the pressure of famine and resource scarcity. The kings, for all their divine authority, could not make it rain. The epic rivalry that defined an era was finally ended not by a superior army, but by a changing climate, a reminder that even the greatest human ambitions are subject to the forces of the natural world. High in the mist-shrouded cloud forests of northern Peru, where the Andes fall away into steep, green valleys, lies a city that seems to defy both gravity and logic. This is Cahokia, the formidable stronghold of the Chachapoya people, often called the warriors of the clouds. To reach it is a journey into the sky itself, ascending through layers of fog until you are met by a sight that is less a city wall and more a sheer cliff face crafted by human hands. The outer fortification is a titanic barrier of pale limestone, soaring 60 feet high in some sections and stretching for nearly a kilometer around the city's perimeter. The scale is almost incomprehensible. Experts estimate that over 43 million cubic feet of stone were quarried, moved, and precisely fitted into place, a construction project that would have required generations of coordinated labor. Unlike the precisely cut blocks of the Inca, the stones of Cahokia's walls are rugged and imposing, fitted together in a seemingly random mosaic that somehow creates an impossibly solid and impenetrable whole. This was not just a defensive wall, it was a monumental declaration of identity and resilience, a statement carved into the mountain that this society would not be easily reached or conquered. The method of entry into this cloud fortress was as clever as it was intimidating. The entire city was accessed through only 3 narrow gateways, each one a death trap for any potential attacker. These were not simple openings, they were long, narrowing corridors known as embudos or funnels. As an enemy force attempted to push through, they would be constricted into a single file, utterly vulnerable to defenders raining down spears, stones, and arrows from the high walls on either side. This design reveals a society that was not just defensive but strategically brilliant, using the very architecture of their home as their primary weapon. The sheer height and mass of the walls also served a second crucial purpose: climate control. Situated at an altitude of 10,000 feet, Cahokia is subject to chilly winds and driving rains. The massive stone perimeter acted as a giant windbreak, creating a sheltered microclimate within where the daily life of the city could flourish, protected from the harsh elements. Once inside these colossal defenses, the city reveals a layout and architectural style utterly unique in the ancient Americas. Instead of the rectangular plazas and buildings found in Inca or Maya cities, Cahokia is a labyrinth of over 400 circular structures perched along the spine of the mountain ridge. These rounded homes and temples, with their characteristic conical thatched roofs, give the city an organic, almost flowing appearance, as if it grew naturally from the mountain itself. The interiors of these buildings were often decorated with a stunning and mysterious artistry. Many walls were adorned with intricate friezes carved in high relief, featuring geometric patterns of zigzags, rhombuses, and stylized eyes. These symbolic decorations, often set in key ceremonial spaces, are believed to represent the Chachapoya's veneration of the natural world, perhaps snakes, condors, or sacred mountains. This artistic signature sets them completely apart from their neighbors, a distinct cultural fingerprint etched in stone. This fierce independence ultimately put them on a collision course with the expanding Inca Empire in the late 15th century. The Inca, under the great ruler Tupac Yupanqui, marched north, absorbing kingdom after kingdom into their vast domain. But when they reached the lands of the Chachapoya, they met a resistance unlike any other. The Cloud Warriors used their intimate knowledge of the treacherous, foggy terrain to their absolute advantage, launching devastating guerrilla attacks from the cover of the clouds and then retreating back to the safety of their impregnable fortress. The conflict was long and bitter, a protracted war of attrition that dragged on for decades. Spanish chroniclers later recorded Inca accounts that spoke of the Chachapoya with a mixture of frustration and respect, acknowledging them as ferocious and formidable opponents. Despite their legendary defensive advantages, the sheer, overwhelming force of the Inca army eventually prevailed through a combination of siege and sheer numbers. Cahokia was finally subdued, and the Chachapoya lands were incorporated into the empire, though the Inca were forced to station a significant permanent garrison there to prevent constant rebellion. Even in defeat, the spirit of the Chachapoya refused to be completely broken. archaeological evidence points to a fascinating and tense coexistence following the conquest. The Inca built their own characteristic rectangular structures within the walls of Caral-Supe, a clear architectural imposition of their authority onto the circular Chachapoya cityscape. Yet, the local population largely continued living in their traditional round houses, maintaining their cultural customs right alongside their new overlords. This cultural standoff, frozen in stone, reveals a people who were conquered but not assimilated, who endured occupation without surrendering their identity. This stubborn resilience might explain why, when Spanish conquistadors arrived decades later, many Chachapoya warriors readily allied with them against their common Inca enemies, hoping to throw off the yoke of the empire that had stolen their independence. The story of Caral-Supe is ultimately not one of a city that fell, but of a people who, from their fortress in the clouds, held out against an empire for generations, their defiant architecture standing as a permanent monument to a culture that chose to fight on its own terms. But our story now takes a dramatic turn, leaving the cloud fortresses of Peru for the windswept, boggy coast of Newfoundland's great northern peninsula. Here, at a place called Aux Meadows, we find a secret so profound it rewrites the entire narrative of transoceanic contact. For centuries, the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492 was enshrined in history as the discovery of the Americas. But the grass-covered mounds at this remote site tell a different story entirely, one of Norse longships and Viking explorers who reached these shores nearly 500 years earlier. The discovery of Aux Meadows in the 1960s by the Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad and his archaeologist wife, Anne Stein Ingstad, was a watershed moment. The local people had long referred to the strange, overgrown ridges as the Old Indian Camp, but the Ingstads recognized something far more significant. Their excavations revealed the unmistakable outlines of Norse architecture, the foundations of 8 buildings made of turf, perfectly matching the style of Viking longhouses and workshops found in Iceland and Greenland. This wasn't a temporary camp, it was a small village complete with a forge for smithing iron, a carpentry workshop, and dwellings that could have housed up to 100 people. The clincher came with the artifacts, a bronze cloak pin, a stone lamp, and part of a spindle whorl used for spinning yarn, all quintessentially Norse. Radiocarbon dating confirmed the incredible truth. This settlement was occupied around the year 1021 AD, a full 4 centuries and 71 years before Columbus set sail. This physical evidence perfectly corroborates the Viking sagas, the epic tales passed down orally and later written on parchment in Iceland. The saga of the Greenlanders and the saga of Eric the Red tell of Leif Erikson, son of the infamous Eric the Red, who was blown off course while sailing from Norway to Greenland. He and his crew landed in a new country rich with resources. They described a land where wild grapes grew in abundance, which led them to call it Vinland or Wineland. The sagas detail subsequent voyages by other Vikings, including Leif's brother, Thorvald, and an Icelandic trader named Thorfinn Karlsefni. These weren't just stories of exploration. They were the first written records of encounters between Europeans and the indigenous peoples of North America, whom the Vikings called Skraelingjar, a term that likely encompassed the ancestors of the Beothuk or the Dorset and Thule peoples. The sagas describe these initial contacts as a tense mixture of trade and conflict. The Vikings traded red cloth and dairy products for valuable furs. But misunderstandings and cultural clashes were inevitable. The Norse, with their metal weapons and unfamiliar technology, were likely seen as a threat. The texts tell of battles breaking out, with the indigenous people using what the Vikings described as war screams and projectiles. In one poignant account, Thorvald Eriksson is mortally wounded by an arrow and, with his dying words, instructs his men to bury him on a headland, remarking that he had found a fine country. This fleeting, fraught relationship, documented in their own words, marks the very beginning of the long and often tragic history of European and Native American interaction. So why did this bold venture, with its promise of timber and furs resources that were desperately scarce in Greenland, fail after such a short time? The settlement at Elands Aux Meadows was occupied for perhaps only a decade at most. The answer lies in a combination of immense logistical challenges and social isolation. The voyage from the Norse settlements in Greenland to Newfoundland was an extremely dangerous 1,000-mile journey across the open North Atlantic, fraught with icebergs and brutal weather. Maintaining a regular supply line for a remote outpost was nearly impossible. Furthermore, the site was not an ideal agricultural base. While it offered a safe harbor and ample resources for ship repair, the climate was too cold for the grapes or the sustained farming needed for a permanent colony. Ultimately, the constant threat of conflict with the local populations, who vastly outnumbered the small band of Norse, made the cost of staying far too high. The settlement was too distant to be effectively supported or defended by the already struggling colonies in Greenland. The Vikings were explorers and opportunists, not conquerors with a large army. Facing these insurmountable odds, they made the pragmatic decision to abandon their North American foothold, pulling back to Greenland and eventually fading from the memory of Europe. Elands Aux Meadows stands not as a monument to a failed colony, but as a testament to incredible seafaring skill and a tantalizing what-if in history. A brief, brilliant spark of transatlantic contact that flickered out almost as soon as it began, leaving its stories to sleep in the sagas and its ruins to rest beneath the Canadian moss for 1,000 years. But what if I told you that the very idea of who could build a monumental city needed to be completely rethought? Our next secret takes us away from the grand stone temples and into the fertile floodplains of northeastern Louisiana, to a site so ancient it predates the use of pottery in North America. This is Poverty Point, a 1,600-acre complex of massive earthworks, and its greatest secret is the identity of its builders. This wasn't the work of a settled, farming society with a rigid class structure. This breathtaking landscape of concentric ridges and soaring mounds was engineered 3,400 years ago by hunter-gatherers, a culture that moved with the seasons to hunt game and gather wild plants. This discovery turns our entire understanding of social complexity on its head, proving that a nomadic way of life was no barrier to organizing a project of staggering ambition and precise geometric vision. From the air, the genius of the design becomes clear. The centerpiece is a set of 6 concentric, C-shaped ridges, each one standing as high as 6 feet tall and separated by wide, flat swells. These aren't random piles of dirt. They form a giant, semi-circular amphitheater opening toward the bayou. The scale is almost beyond belief together. These ridges stretch for over 7 miles. Archaeologists estimate that moving this amount of earth by hand, using only woven baskets, would have required over 5 million hours of labor. This suggests a society capable of incredibly sophisticated organization, able to coordinate the efforts of hundreds of people over generations, all without the coercive power of a king or the demands of a centralized state. It was likely a communal effort driven by shared religious belief or social prestige, a collective undertaking that bound the community together. The purpose of these ridges is still debated, but the leading theory is that they formed the foundation for a seasonal city. During specific times of the year, perhaps for trading festivals or sacred ceremonies, people would have gathered from across the region. They would have built their temporary homes on top of these elevated ridges, safe from the seasonal floods of the Mississippi River, looking inward toward the communal plaza where rituals and exchanges took place. This wasn't a permanent residence, it was a periodically occupied ceremonial and economic hub, one of the earliest and most sophisticated examples of its kind in the world. Towering over this entire complex is Mound A, a behemoth of earth that ranks as the second largest prehistoric earthen mound in North America. Shaped like a giant flying bird with a wingspan of over 600 feet, it rises 72 feet into the sky. The construction of this single mound required moving nearly 300,000 cubic yards of soil, that's over 35,000 dump truckloads, and it was built in just a few months. How do we know the timeline? Soil science provides the answer. The clay and silt layers show no signs of weathering between them. There are no grass lines or erosion channels. This means each new layer was placed immediately after the last in a continuous, frenetic burst of activity. This suggests a powerful, shared motivation, a compelling spiritual or social reason that drove thousands of people to work in unison to complete this colossal symbol in a single, intense effort. The precision of Poverty Point extends from the earth to the heavens. The entire complex is a giant astronomical observatory. The central axis of the bird mound aligns perfectly with the setting sun on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Furthermore, the various ridges and other mounds are aligned to mark the spring and autumn equinoxes. This celestial choreography proves the builders possessed a deep, empirical knowledge of the solar cycle, using it to organize their ceremonial calendar and likely to signal the optimal times for gathering specific resources or holding their grand gatherings. Their world was ordered, timed, and measured by the movements of the sun, and they encoded that knowledge directly into the landscape. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of Poverty Point's significance comes from the smallest of artifacts. Despite being a hunter-gatherer culture, they were at the heart of a vast trading network that spanned half the continent. Archaeologists have unearthed tools and ornaments made from rocks and minerals that could only have come from hundreds of miles away. There are spear points crafted from chert hauled from the Ohio River Valley over 700 miles to the north. There are polished stone beads made from quartzite that originated in the Appalachian Mountains of Alabama and Tennessee. Most strikingly, they worked with raw copper that was transported all the way from the Great Lakes region, a journey of over 900 miles. This wasn't simple barter, it was a formalized exchange system, proof that this site was a major pilgrimage center, a place where people brought the most valuable materials from their own homes to trade, forging social and spiritual connections across a vast geographic and cultural expanse. Poverty Point stands as a permanent monument to a different path to complexity, one built not on agriculture and kings, but on shared belief, collective labor, and an interconnectedness that reached across ancient America. Imagine a city suspended in the sky, shrouded in perpetual mist and clinging to a near-vertical mountainside in one of the most remote regions of Peru. This is Gran Pajatin, the cloud forest citadel of the Chachapoya, and its inaccessibility is its greatest secret and its most powerful protection. To reach it is an expedition in itself, a multi-day trek through the incredibly steep and slippery terrain of the Alto Mayo Valley, where the air is thin and the jungle is so dense that the ruins can remain hidden until you are literally standing before them. This isn't a site you simply visit, it is a destination you earn, and that profound isolation is precisely why it remains one of the last truly enigmatic cities of the Americas, a place frozen in time, untouched by later conquests and only partially revealed to modern archaeology. The architecture that emerges from the mist is unlike anything else in the ancient world. Instead of the angular, rectangular structures of the Inca or the Maya, Gran Pajatin is a symphony of curves and circles. The city is a complex of at least 24 major circular structures, many of them 2 stories high, perched on over 200 stone terraces that slice into the mountainside. These aren't simple huts, they are sophisticated buildings with intricate stonework, connected by a network of stairways and pathways that weave through the cloud forest. But the true, breathtaking signature of Gran Pajatin is its decoration. The exterior walls of many buildings are adorned with striking slate mosaics, forming figures that seem to dance and shift in the foggy light. There are condors, serpents, and humanoid figures in dynamic postures, all created by embedding dark, polished pieces of stone into the lighter masonry. This unique artistic style is a powerful declaration of Chachapoya identity, a cultural fingerprint that distinguishes them completely from the Inca who would later conquer their land. The entire city feels organic, as if it grew from the mountain itself, a seamless fusion of human ingenuity and the untamed natural world. The mystery of Gran Pajatin deepens when we realize it was already abandoned by the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century. Unlike many other Chachapoya strongholds that fell to the Inca, there is no evidence of a battle here, no signs of siege or conquest. So why did its people leave such a magnificent and defensible city? The answer likely lies in the same forces that led to the abandonment of so many ancient sites, a devastating collision of disease and social collapse. Before the Spanish ever set foot in the highlands, their old-world diseases raced ahead of them, carried along indigenous trade routes. Epidemics of smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through the Americas, decimating populations that had no immunity. For a remote, densely populated center like Gran Pajatin, such an outbreak would have been catastrophic. A society that could sustain the construction of such a city required a large, coordinated workforce. A pandemic could have wiped out a critical portion of the population in a matter of weeks, making it impossible to maintain their terraced agriculture or their social structure. Facing starvation and the breakdown of their community, the survivors likely made the difficult choice to descend from their mountain sanctuary and disperse into smaller, more manageable groups in the valleys below, leaving their sacred stone dancers to the silence of the clouds. This same isolation that protected Gran Pajatin for centuries now presents an immense challenge to its modern study and preservation. The site is so remote and difficult to access that major archaeological expeditions are rare and incredibly costly. The constant moisture and lush vegetation of the cloud forest are in a perpetual battle with the stonework. Roots pry apart walls and lichen slowly consumes the intricate mosaics. Furthermore, the site sits within the Rio Abacio National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that is closed to the public to protect its fragile ecosystem and irreplaceable archaeological treasures. This creates a delicate balancing act. While the restrictions prevent the damage that mass tourism would inevitably cause, they also limit the ability of conservators to conduct ongoing stabilization work and hinder comprehensive study. Gran Pajatin stands as a poignant reminder that some secrets are so fragile that protecting them means knowing that we may never fully understand them, that some ancient wonders are destined to remain forever half-seen in the realm of the mysterious and the sublime. As we stand at the end of this journey, looking back across the vast expanse of time and the incredible landscapes we've explored, it's clear that these 25 secrets are far more than just archaeological trivia. They are the final, echoing whispers of entire worlds. Every perfectly fitted stone at Machu Picchu, every glyph on the stairway at Copan, every shell bead traded at Poverty Point represents something profoundly human. A boundless drive to understand the universe, to connect with the divine, to build something that would last, and to leave a mark on this earth that shouts, "We were here." Cities are not just collections of ruins, they are the physical manifestations of dreams, of ingenuity, of belief, and of a spirit that sought to reach for the heavens both literally and figuratively. The most humbling and thrilling secret of all, the one that truly unites every site from the desert of Nazca to the cloud forests of Gran Pajatin, is the staggering amount we still have left to learn. For every question we've answered, a dozen more have emerged from the jungle soil. With every technological leap, from LiDAR revealing entire hidden cities to isotopic analysis tracing the journeys of a single person, we peel back another layer of this endless mystery. The past is not a static, closed book. It is a living, breathing field of discovery, constantly being rewritten with each new excavation and each freshly deciphered symbol. The real treasure isn't a hoard of gold. It's the next revelation waiting just beneath the surface, the next fragment of a story that will force us to rethink everything we thought we knew about human history. These lost cities are not just monuments to the past, they are mirrors held up to our own civilization. They show us the breathtaking heights we can achieve through collaboration and vision, but they also carry a sobering warning about the fragile balance between human ambition and the environment that sustains us. The stories of collapse at Cahokia, Tikal, and Choco Canyon are not ancient failures. They are powerful lessons in resilience, sustainability, and the complex interplay between climate, resources, and social order. They challenge us to look at our own world and ask what legacy we are building and what secrets we might leave behind for future generations to uncover. So we turn this final question over to you. Which of these revelations reshaped your understanding of the ancient world the most? Was it the acoustic magic of Chichen Itza singing with the voice of a sacred bird? The peaceful, musical society of Caral that flourished without war? Or perhaps the sheer logistical miracle of moving a 40-ton Olmec head through 60 miles of swamp? Let us know which secret captured your imagination down in the comments. We love hearing your perspectives and diving into these discussions with you. If you enjoyed this expedition into the unknown, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because our journey through the world's greatest historical mysteries has only just begun. Yet for all the centuries of exploration and excavation, some of the most breathtaking discoveries are no longer being made with shovels and trowels, but with lasers and algorithms. We are living in the golden age of a quiet technological revolution that is completely rewriting the map of the ancient Americas, peeling back the dense green canopy of the jungle to reveal lost worlds we never knew existed. This revolution is led by one remarkable technology, LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine flying a specialized plane over an impenetrable stretch of rainforest, and instead of seeing the top of the trees, millions of laser pulses penetrate the smallest gaps in the foliage, bouncing off the ground below and returning to a sensor to create a massively detailed, three-dimensional map of the true ground surface. When you digitally strip away every single tree and plant, the ancient landscape emerges with stunning clarity, and what we are finding is nothing short of miraculous. In the jungles of Guatemala, a LiDAR survey of the Maya Biosphere Reserve revealed a breathtaking hidden metropolis. What was once thought to be a sparsely populated region dotted with a few major cities like Tikal was in fact a vast, interconnected network of urban centers, towns, and villages. The laser maps showed over 60,000 previously unknown structures, elevated causeways connecting cities like modern-day highways, complex irrigation and terrace systems that would have supported intensive agriculture, and even defensive fortifications and earthworks on a scale no one had ever imagined. This wasn't just a few hidden houses, it was the discovery of a sprawling, sophisticated civilization of 10 to 15 million people, a number that forces us to completely rethink the population density and economic power of the ancient Maya world. Entire cities, complete with pyramids and grand plazas, have been pinpointed for future exploration, their locations now known thanks to this digital magic. But the technological toolbox doesn't end there. For sites that are already known and protected, archaeologists are using ground-penetrating radar to see beneath the surface without ever breaking ground. This technology sends radar pulses into the earth, painting a picture of buried structures and anomalies. At a place like Cahokia, GPR has been used to map out the entire layout of the central precinct, revealing the foundations of a series of massive, circular wooden structures that may have been a calendar system even more complex than Woodhenge. In the stone courtyards of ancient Maya cities, GPR is detecting hidden tombs and ritual caches, guiding excavations with pinpoint accuracy and ensuring that when we finally dig, we do so with the reverence and precision these sites deserve. It allows us to be surgeons of the soil, not mere gravediggers of the past, Perhaps the most personal and humanizing technological advances, however, are happening in the laboratory through the study of ancient DNA and isotopic analysis. We are no longer just studying the grand monuments and artifacts. We are beginning to study the people themselves. By extracting minuscule amounts of DNA from skeletal remains, scientists are tracing epic migration routes and uncovering surprising family connections across vast distances. DNA evidence has revealed, for instance, that the elite rulers of powerful Maya cities like Copan and Tikal were often linked by blood, a sprawling network of royal dynasties that intermarried to forge political alliances. It can also trace devastating stories like the identification of a group of young women sacrificed at Cahokia, who isotope analysis revealed were not from the local area but had been brought to the city from distant communities, perhaps as part of a tragic ritual exchange. This biochemical analysis goes even further. By studying the isotopes in a person's teeth, specifically the elements strontium and oxygen, scientists can determine where an individual was born and where they lived throughout their life. This has revealed incredible stories of individual mobility. At the great Maya city of Tikal, analysis showed that one ruler buried in an elaborate tomb was not born in the city at all, but had come from somewhere far away, perhaps seizing power through conquest or political marriage. In the Andes, the same techniques are showing how the Inca moved entire populations across their empire, a policy called mitma to consolidate control. These aren't just abstract data points, they are the recovered life stories of ancient people, giving us intimate glimpses into their journeys, their origins, and the complex, interconnected world they inhabited. Technology is not just revealing lost cities, it is finally giving a voice and a story to the lost people who built